a specter is haunting the United States. The specter of Bernie's revolution. We are joined tonight not just by the senator, but by someone who fled another socialist revolution, one that Bernie Sanders speaks very highly of. This is Verdict with Ted Cruz. Welcome back to Verdict with Ted Cruz. We are joined, as ever, by the senator and also by the senator's Tia Sonia. My Spanish is not very good, but I think that was about right. Aunt Sonia.
That is correct.
Thank you. This is, in a few days, going to be the 58th anniversary of your fleeing the communist regime in Cuba.
That is correct, sir.
And yet we've got the leader of the Democratic Party nomination process is praising the Fidel Castro regime. I think we have the clip.
Very opposed to the authoritarian nature of Cuba. But it's unfair to simply say everything is bad. When Fidel Castro came into office, you know what he did? He had a massive literacy program. Is that a bad thing?
Listen, Bernie has spent his entire life, his entire career, praising communist dictators. But this week, his latest ode to Fidel Castro, frankly, just pissed me off. And this is not a joke. This guy is the front runner for the Democratic nomination to be president, and he sings the praises of Castro and Cuban communism. My dad fled Cuba in '57. My Tia Sonia was still there. She was a kid. And so she saw the Cuban Revolution firsthand, and she ended up fighting against Castro. So Tia, if you would, I just want you, first of all, tell me what it was like to be in Cuba when the revolution happened, when Castro took over.
Actually, it was a lot of people were happy because finally somebody was coming in that was praising, we're going to give you a chance to change your hope. We're going to change things around. Everybody was going to have whatever they want to. The poor will never be poor. The rich continue to have money. And everybody will be the same. In reality, yes, everybody went the same, but everybody was poor. Everybody went down. Everybody got paid the same amount of money. There was no difference between the poor and the rich. Everybody lost.
It's not that everyone was rich. Everyone was poor and suffering and miserable.
And everybody was miserable. Everybody was miserable. What Bernie is saying is a bunch of garbage.
So you're there. You're a teenager. How old were you?
Probably 16, 15.
Okay, so you're seeing this. You're a teenage girl.
Right.
You see what's happening. You see Castro begin executing people.
Yeah, persecuting people. Nobody could talk. Nobody could say anything. He trained the people to even be against the family. The sons against the father, the daughters against the family.
So how did he do that?
By indoctrinating these people, by telling we're going to give you this and that and the other, and it's all going to be free, but you got to tell us what's going on in your house, who talk against the government. So everything was persecuting one another, especially the older people, that actually we live a good life before in Cuba. It was beautiful.
What do people face in terms of their friends and neighbors and families spying on them for the government?
You have people in each block, there is somebody that is responsible to keep an eye on you in your house.
So there's a tattletale. There's a spy in every block.
In every block. And they tell you keep an eye on every neighbor of this block.
And what sort of things are they watching for?
They're watching for everything. If you bring anything, maybe I'm going from United States to Cuba, and there's somebody coming in. So we need to watch that house in case they go out and sell in the black market or they do something with what you brought in. So somebody's always keeping an eye on you and try to report you. A good thing that happened to something that happened to me that is very interesting. One of the trips that I went back to Cuba, I wanted to take some of the kids from there to go fishing. I love fishing. So I went in and tried to rent a boat, and they told me, we can't. We don't rent boats to Cuban people. And I said, you may leave. And I said, look, I have a passport. I have a flight leaving on Friday. I already left. So I'm coming in to take my family on a boat ride. We can't give it to you. We can't rent you a boat. You're Cuban. So
because they're so afraid.
By the way,
they
Michael,
know
if you go there, you can rent a boat.
You can rent a boat.
Right.
She can't rent a boat because she's Cuban, even though she's an American citizen now.
Yes, you're Cuban. So you can't do it. There was a boat in the river that my niece wanted to go in. And when we get in to ride the boat with the rest of the people, they said, you all cannot get in. You all are Cuban. And I said, but we're paying with the same money that they're paying. Well, I'm sorry. You can't come in. You're not from another country. You're Cuban. And Cuban people are not allowed.
They're not allowed to leave.
No,
because they
they're
know
not
if they
allowed.
were allowed to leave, they'd all leave. Sonia, how quickly after, as you say, people liked Castro initially. He was promising them the world. How quickly did it turn? I mean, how quickly did it turn?
It turned right away. It turned right away. He immediately started saying the policies that he wanted to do. He was going to take things away from the rich. He was going to take things away from the people to give to others. He was to actually take money from you and give it to the poor. So on the other side, I make my money. I work for what I have. My father worked hard to be where he was. My mother was a great school teacher. She was proud of what she was doing. My mother itself was told that she have to teach at the school a different kind of curriculum. She was told she needed to teach about the revolution, Castro, the regime, the things that needed to happen. My mother had to actually pretend that she was losing her mind, and she was dismissed immediately.
And let me underscore this story. And listen, I grew up hearing this story as a kid. I mean, I would sit with my cousin Bibi, who's
correct.
Sonia's daughter. The two of us would sit literally on the floor in the living room and listen to my dad and my tia Sonia tell us stories about the revolution. And my abuelo and abuela, their parents were there also. So my grandmother, my abuela, she's a 6th grade teacher. Castro takes over. And she's ordered, you must teach communism to the kids. You must indoctrinate. You must brainwash the kids. And my grandmother said she wasn't going to do it. And so it's funny. My tia Sonia mentioned something just very mild. But my grandmother pretended she was insane. In the classroom, she began literally foaming at the mouth and pretending she was insane. Why? Because she couldn't quit. In the communist dictatorship, she wasn't allowed to quit. And she made the decision she would rather have the stigma, have the shame of people thinking she was a crazy person, than be a part of indoctrinating these kids.
That is true. And it was very painful because my mother was a great teacher. It was loved by many people. But you have to play crazy in order to get out of that situation.
But what I want to know is how in Cuba, the public opinion changes very quickly. People see what a monster Castro is and they start to hate his guts. How is it that in the United States, now, so many years on, 58 years on now since you left, you have a presidential candidate, you got a U.S. senator who's still singing the praises of this guy. What did he miss?
He have not been with the Cuban people. If you go there as a Cuban, you go and see somebody, a relative. You're going to see the misery that they live in. They don't know what to put on the table to serve their kids. They don't know they're going to get the food that they're going to eat tomorrow. If you all go in as somebody from another country or as a tourist, you are actually become prisoner of the government. They take you where they want you to go. They showed you the model school. They showed you the best hospitals. They showed you the best restaurants.
In 1989, Sanders stated after visiting Cuba, quote, I did not see a hungry child. I did not see any homeless people. Bernie said the Cuban people, quote, had an almost religious affection for Castro.
That is not true. He is lying. He's lying to the people of this country. He is playing on the mind of the younger generation here.
He was either himself complicit in the lie or he was naive enough or ideological enough to let the Castro regime lie to him and say, look at this paradise.
They didn't take into what the Cuban people were. Cuban people are starving to death. Cuban people don't have any money to buy anything.
So let me take you back to 59, back to 60. The revolution succeeded. You begin fighting against Castro. What happened to you as a result? What happened when you started fighting
I was constantly persecuted. People was looking for me everywhere. They want to take me to prison. They picked me up several times.
So you were pretty clearly fighting against the regime.
Totally against Castro.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So and this is after Castro's taken over. So
Yeah.
he's
Yes,
the dictator.
yes.
So like when they picked you up, what happened? What does that mean?
Well,
that
they put you in a room, and there was people sitting on the floor, and everybody's, that's where you were, with a whole bunch of people in the floor, and they keep you there for 2 or 3 days. My parents did not know where I was. My mother did not know, so she was going crazy trying to find me. My friends that I have, could not even come and find out with my parents where was I or what was wrong with me. They were afraid because everybody was persecuted. So it was very difficult to live on the Castro regime.
when you left Cuba, it was 62 you left?
Right,
You've been back a bunch of times.
right, yes.
So when you come back, you usually bring a duffel bag with
I bring
medicine.
I bring
clothes.
food, clothes, sheets,
Just for relatives,
just
for friends.
friends, people that need
So they can't get anything there.
nothing.
She leaves a suitcase. She leaves every bit of clothes she
Everything.
bought. She leaves her underwear and bra.
Everything.
Because nobody has underwear there because there's so much poverty. You'll wear like sweatpants, a T-shirt, and flip-flops.
That's
what
it.
she wears
And that's how I
on the
come back
plane
here.
coming back.
Right, that is correct.
A lot of people don't understand what is the difference between socialism and
That
communism.
is correct.
Socialism is simply the economic system of communism. Socialism is government ownership of the means of production or distribution. Cuba in the 1950s was the world's #1 producer of sugar.
Yeah.
It had problems. Look, Batista was a corrupt dictator. He was a
Right.
bastard. My father, to this day, doesn't have his front teeth because Batista's police kicked them in. His guards, his army officers kicked them in.
But what about the universal health care? I mean, we're told by a lot of people in the United States, a lot of left-wingers, they say Cuba has some of the best health care in the world and everybody's covered.
I can personally tell you that I went to the doctor there because I have mosquito bites that it got into infection, and they put a shot on me in front of 60 other people that were there waiting for to be seen by a doctor. There's no transportation. There's no gas. So you can't move. Doctors come to your house in a bicycle, and they're hungry. They're hungry. When they get there, they come to the house to see. Matter of fact, I was in a house visiting, and they were trying to see the little girl. He came on a bicycle, and I bought some things that there was somebody in the street selling, and he said, "Can I have one?"
Probably the most visible sign that Cuba hasn't changed or hasn't progressed is they have those old cars, right?
Yes.
And people like to think that that's sort of quaint and cute that they have cars from the 1950s. The reason they have cars from the 1950s is they can't get anything else.
The scary thing about all of this is you've got the experience of it, 58 years of experience since you left Cuba. There are various studies that have come out that show that even the majority of young Americans, millennials and Gen Z, now embrace socialism and prefer it to capitalism. Now, the bright side, I will say, the silver lining, is that a much smaller percentage can actually define socialism.
That's
so
right.
there would seem to be a problem there. But beyond just ignorance, beyond just not knowing what it is what is drawing young Americans to this evil, evil ideology?
It's the word that he's giving out, the change. They want to see something different. They want to try something new. It doesn't work, guys. It does not work. All of this ambition and giving it to me, there's nothing given to you. You need to work and try to achieve your dream by hard work and by doing what you want to get ahead.
I mean, I've noticed this with your colleague, Senator Sanders. He's been talking about this for 50 years and no one listened. But now only, now that he's in his mid-70s, it's catching on. And I even think of this absent Bernie Sanders. Forget about him for a second. It took a long time. People knew that communism, socialism were terrible for so long. And now they don't know that.
Well, and too often they're not taught in schools what happened. How many Bernie supporters know that the Soviet Union killed 20 million people and China killed 77 million
Right.
people? They don't know that.
No.
And so when Bernie defends it seems, look, and I have to admit, I remember in college, a guy who lived down the hall from me had a poster on the wall of Che Guevara.
Yeah.
And I went in, I said, hey, that's really cool. That's all, Che Guevara was a guerrilla, fought with Fidel Castro in Cuba. Yeah. And I said, hey, that's really cool. That's awesome. Have you thought of maybe putting a poster of Hitler next to it? And maybe Stalin and Mao? Like, if you're going to celebrate people that torture and murder, actually, Che was an amateur.
He was weak. Right. He was low on the totem pole.
But, he was good looking. He had stubble, and he was, these villains have been glamorized. Yeah. And it's dangerous.
We've talked a lot about the political and the economic side of things, how the government takes all your stuff and then they take power away from you. You're both religious. I notice, Sonia, you have a cross that you're wearing. Obviously, Senator Cruz. One of the big aspects of communism, as it's always been practiced, is the atheism of it all. And I wonder if there's a relation here that as religiosity in America has declined, as young people are raised more or less without a religion, if maybe that's playing some role in why communism is catching on. One of the great men of the 20th century to defeat communism was Pope John Paul II.
Well, and Pope John Paul II played a profound role of going to Poland and promising that Poland would be free and speaking up. And it was truly, I think, divine providence.
They cheered. They said, Pope, we want God.
And Reagan and Margaret Thatcher all at the same time. And I think those three people, more than any human beings on earth, defeated the Soviet Union and won the Cold War. Mind you, Bernie was rooting for the Soviet Union during all of this.
He's not even hiding it that much.
Bernie honeymooned in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Michael, where'd you honeymoon?
I honeymooned in Hawaii, USA.
Okay, that's where, like, normal people, you go to the beach, you go to, Heidi and I went to St. Thomas. It was beautiful. Yeah. We were walking along the beach. We had fun. What kind of crazy ideologue says, sweetheart, I love you so much. Let's do a honeymoon in the Soviet Union. That clip you played. God. He says he's no friend of Putin. There's only one person I know on the national stage that honeymooned in the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union killed over 20 million people. This is not cute little faculty leftists. If Bernie was a professor at some liberal arts college out in the frozen tundra, who cares? He's just corrupting a few young minds. Yeah. This is someone who wants to be president of the United States, and he kisses up to and apologizes for totalitarian dictators. And you know who he doesn't praise? Americans.
Right.
Like, when have you ever heard him speak as positively about Abraham Lincoln as he does about Castro and Ortega and Mao and Stalin? Listen, communism also hates God.
Yeah.
If you look at these communist regimes, they persecute faith. They prevent people from... The beauty of the First Amendment is it gives everyone the right to choose how to worship, what your faith will be. Bernie, when he praised China in the debate this week, somehow when Bernie talked about its great poverty eradication, you don't have to go back to Mao to find the torture and murder. Right now today, there are 1 million Uyghurs, a religious and ethnic minority, 1 million in concentration camps in China today. Why is Bernie and why are leftists so willing to praise and be proud of regimes that are torturing and murdering people?
Do you think this is part of why they make their appeal successfully, though? Because the thing I notice so much about the socialists in America today is they're all making these very moral arguments. It's about human rights. It's about giving people their right to health care and their right to have a lot of money.
Here's a story my grandmother told me. In the schools, you would have Cuban soldiers come in, and this is kindergarten, first grade.
Yeah.
And they'd tell the children, they'd say, close your eyes and pray to Jesus for a piece of candy. And the kids would all do it, and they'd open their eyes, and there'd be no candy. And then the soldiers would say, close your eyes and pray to Fidel Castro for a piece of candy.
You're kidding me.
And the kids would close their eyes, and the soldiers would put candy on their desks. And they'd open their eyes, and there was candy. This is the literacy program Bernie Sanders is praising. This is the indoctrination that my abuela refused to participate in.
And that is true. They are actually indoctrinating the people since they were tiny little kids.
Did it work? I mean, did the...
Of course it doesn't work.
It doesn't work because people
it
see
doesn't
reality.
work. People, why don't they work?
Yeah.
They don't work. Nobody want to work in Cuba. Why do they want to work? They're going to make the same money that you're making, that he's making. Why do I want to do that?
But do they believe the theory? I mean, does the indoctrination end up persuading
Actually,
people?
they thought that it was going to be reality. They really blind them to believe what they were saying, but they immediately took the blind off and saying everybody's in the same boat. We're all hungry.
They know they're hungry. They know they're poor. They know
Right.
they're miserable. They know that
That's
hasn't
right.
happened.
That's right.
I mean, there's a reason people every day risk their lives to flee Cuba.
That's correct.
You know, Reagan, in the height of the Cold War, he had a great way of putting it. He said, the thing liberals never seem to notice is on the Berlin Wall, the machine guns all point in one direction.
Right.
That you didn't get anyone from East Germany saying, or from West Germany saying, I got to go live in that communist paradise.
Right.
The way I like to put it as a Cuban American is the thing liberals never notice is in Cuba, the rafts are all going one way, just once.
That's right.
I'd like to see Bernie Sanders go hop on a raft in Key West
Yeah.
and
Yes.
head 90 miles south.
That's right.
And by the way, he
Not a lot
wants
of rafts
socialized
going that way.
medicine. They have
Then
it there.
go over
It's just
there.
you can't actually see a doctor. You can't get medicine. You can't get toilet paper.
Yeah. Well, actually, you know, tying in all of these points on the economic, on the political, and on the religious, communism has been called the God that failed, right? It was a sort of substitute religion, a substitute God, and it failed. And you saw it fail personally. What was the biggest shock? I mean, what was the biggest despair, the biggest regret when you saw something that you had believed in fail?
Well, the biggest, it was seeing the people suffering for not being able to even get food to put on the plate.
It's so basic.
The basic things, not being able to work, because why do you want to work when you don't have anything to buy with? You know, that money disappears from you immediately. And you all know the numbers, but, you know, an average person make $30 a month.
$30 per month.
$30 per month.
Wow.
So what are you going to do with that?
Right.
So people are being drinking water. You see the kids. They drink water with sugar to get their stomach full.
It's that basic need. It's so interesting that you say that because communism starts out as this idealistic fantasy, very highfalutin, very high-minded, literacy programs, all that, and then the reality of the failure is people
totally
can't even
different.
fill their stomachs.
That is true.
Although, you know, there is one exception, which is the Communist Party rulers. Look, Fidel Castro lived like a billionaire.
Oh,
He filled
yeah.
his stomach.
And by the way, Putin lives like a billionaire. Maduro and Hugo Chavez before him, they lived like billionaires.
Right.
Communism, when you have all the power at the top, and what does Bernie suggest it would be any different if the government is in charge of everything?
Yeah.
Every place that has happened, the rulers live like kings and
Right.
everyone else is miserable.
Right. Well, we did actually get one mailbag question that I think is very much on this topic, which is with the Democratic Party veering so far to the left, them embracing these absolutely disgusting positions, hopefully will turn off most of the American people. Should conservatives be happy? Should conservatives be happy that the God that failed is about to fail the Democratic Party?
Not necessarily.
No,
You're not as
Look,
complacent.
I understand people saying, okay, great, Bernie's so extreme. That means Trump will get reelected. I hope Trump gets reelected. I'm working hard to reelect the president. But listen, what is truly terrifying is I think the American people could elect a wild-eyed socialist.
Yeah.
yes.
The media, we're a divided country. If 100,000 votes had flipped in 2016, Hillary Clinton would be the president right now. And Bernie, the media treats him kind of like your crazy uncle. Oh, he's just the crazy uncle. Isn't that cute? He's praising murdering, torturing communist dictators. Well, this guy believes this stuff.
Right.
In his heart and soul, he believes it. His whole life has been dedicated
Right.
to it. And I got to admit, I am... It's all fine and good to celebrate. unless he ends up winning.
Unless it
And,
happens.
and
Oh, gosh.
God help the direction this country goes if that happens.
Well, because you already fled one communist hellhole, and this was the great hope. Is America's the great
There's
hope?
no place to go.
Where do you go
There's
after
no
this?
place to go.
Well, I hope you won't go anywhere. You, the listener, we've already used up more than our time, and we've taken up too much of your time, Tia Sonia, but thank you so much for being here. And we've got a lot more coming up on the show anyway, so be sure not to flee anywhere. I'm Michael Knowles. This is Verdict with Ted Cruz.